Have you ever walked past an abandoned playground and felt a chill run down your spine? That eerie sensation that the rusty swings and overgrown slides are watching you, waiting for you? Maybe you've heard the faint echo of children's laughter when there's no one around, or caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of your eye, only to find nothing there when you turn to look. Most people would brush these feelings off as just their imagination running wild. But I know better. I know that sometimes playgrounds hold secrets darker than you could ever imagine. Secrets that can consume you, trap you, and change you forever. My name is Ethan Walker, and I'm about to embark on a journey with you, one that will tug at the very threads of your understanding of reality and perception. I want to take you beyond the surface, into the depths of an unsettling tale that intertwines forgotten memories, the bittersweet tendrils of lost innocence, and a playground that, by all accounts, should never have come into existence. But before we dive headfirst into this narrative, it's essential that I issue a caution. Once you hear this story, it will linger in your mind like an uninvited guest. You'll never be able to glance at an empty lot or an old swing set without feeling the weight of its implications. The familiar innocence of childhood play will be forever tinged with a nebulous apprehension, and the echoes of laughter will carry something darker beneath the surface. Let me set the stage for you. Picture a small, unassuming town where the mundane often masks the extraordinary. It was a place that seemed frozen in time, where streets were lined with modest houses, each with its own story whispered through the cracks in the pavement. Children filled the air with laughter and energy, their carefree spirits igniting a sense of nostalgia in every adult they passed. But deep within the heart of this idyllic town lay a secret, a playground that had once flourished with joyful voices but now lay abandoned, shrouded in a veil of mystery and neglect. The swings creaked in the wind, and the slide stood like a sentinel, weathered and wise, bearing witness to the passage of time. Most had forgotten it existed, a relic of days gone by. But I hadn't. I was drawn to it, compelled by a memory I couldn't quite place. This is where our story begins, with shadows lurking just beyond the edges of recollection. I invite you to join me as we peel back the layers of complacence that surround our perceptions. We will explore the tangled vines of nostalgia and fear, casting a light upon the darkness that lingers in the corners of our minds. Prepare yourself, for what you're about to discover might challenge everything you once held true and awaken truths you thought forever buried. So, take a breath, open your mind, and let me guide you into the haunting world of forgotten memories and revelations that will forever change the way you see the world. Are you ready? If you're brave enough to continue down this treacherous path, ensure that you're not walking it alone. The shadows can be misleading, and the whispering winds can distort your sense of reality. Always remember, whatever you do, do not close your eyes. For in the suffocating darkness behind your eyelids, where fear and imagination intertwine, you might just catch a fleeting, chilling glimpse of the children waiting to play with you forever. Now, let me take you back to the summer of 1993, a season that was supposed to be filled with sunlight, laughter, and carefree innocence, but instead became the backdrop for an experience that would haunt my every waking moment for years to come. That summer, I encountered a playground, seemingly innocent at first glance, nestled at the end of a narrow, tree-lined road on the outskirts of my small town. The sun hung high in the sky, painting everything in warm hues, but there was something about that playground, a creeping unease that settled in the pit of my stomach. The swings creaked mournfully in the gentle breeze, and the slide towered ominously, casting long, dark shadows on the ground beneath it. Children's laughter echoed faintly through the air as I approached, but there was an oddity to it, an undertone that felt as though it was wavering between joy and something darker, something unsettling. I remember the moment so vividly. I stepped onto the soft, weathered wood chips that surrounded the rusted metal structures, and instinctively, I glanced around, half expecting to see a friend or family member nearby. But I was alone. A chill ran down my spine as a memory flickered across my mind. Stories I had heard about children who had vanished, leaving only whispers in the wind, their ghostly presence forever lingering in the places they once knew so well. As I approached the swing set, I couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. It was as if the very air around me was thickening, each breath a reminder of my isolation. The laughter I had heard moments before faded into a haunting giggle that echoed in the recesses of my mind. I was drawn in, unable to resist the lure of the familiar playground setting, my childhood memories beckoning me closer, even as instinct screamed to turn away. With shaky hands, I grasped the cold chains of a swing and hesitated. I could still hear those laughter-filled echoes, but they had twisted into something sinister. Suddenly, I felt a rush of wind and the unmistakable flutter of movement behind me, a whisper of youthful energy, pounding hearts, and restless spirits that hungered for companionship. I turned, but the only thing that met my gaze was the silvery glint of forgotten toys scattered across the ground, their colors dulled by time and neglect. That's when I realized the children I heard were not just figments of my imagination. They were the echoes of those lost souls waiting for someone to join them in their eternal game of tag. They wanted me to play. They wanted me to surrender to the darkness, to forget the world beyond the rusted gates of that playground. And so, standing there, heart racing, I wrestled with the choice that lay before me, to take a leap into the unknown and perhaps join them, or to flee from the shadows that whispered sweet temptations. The playground that summer would forever intertwine itself with my being, a reminder of the choice I made on that fateful day, echoing through my mind every time I closed my eyes. Something so innocent on the surface became a shimmering veil over a world I could not fully comprehend, sparking a journey filled with fear, regret, and an unsettling curiosity that still lingers within me. It all started when I returned to my hometown of Millbrook, a small, forgettable town on the map of rural America. Nestled among rolling hills and dense woodlands, Millbrook had always been the kind of place that felt frozen in time, a quaint little town where everyone knew each other's names, and where change came as slowly as the seasons. I hadn't been back in nearly 2 decades, not since I left for college with stars in my eyes and an eagerness to escape the suffocating smallness of it all. Back then, Millbrook's quiet streets and the echo of my childhood felt more like a prison than a home. But now, at 35, I found myself driving down those familiar streets, a knot of dread growing in my stomach with each passing mile. The roads twisted and turned through the same patches of farmland, past the same swaying cornfields, each stretch of asphalt a reminder of the life I had worked so hard to leave behind. The news of my grandmother's passing had reached me weeks earlier, carried through a chain of family whispers and social media posts. It hit me like a shockwave, not just for the loss itself but for the realization that I hadn't been there, hadn't been a part of her life for years. I had always held a special place in her heart, but our relationship, once vibrant with shared stories and warm embraces, had grown strained over time, marred by distance and lingering, unspoken tensions. For her, I had been a brilliant light that, once extinguished, faded too fast to return. As I pulled up to the old Victorian house on Elm Street, my heart squeezed painfully in my chest. I felt a pang of guilt for letting so much time pass without a visit, for letting our bond weaken with the gradual erosion of years. The house loomed before me, an imposing structure that towered like a sentinel over the memories it contained. Its paint, once a cheerful shade of yellow, was now peeling and faded, revealing the splintering wood beneath. The shutters, once neatly painted and functional, hung askew, as if too weary to hold their ground against the elements. It looked like it had aged 100 years since I'd last seen it, struggling against time and neglect, much like the feelings I had buried within myself during my years away. As I stepped out of my car, the crisp autumn wind whipped around me, biting at my cheeks and lifting the fallen leaves into a swirl of color. The air carried with it the scent of decay, mingling with something else, something I couldn't quite place, an ethereal perfume of nostalgia that was both painful and comforting. The driveway, lined with weeds that had claimed dominance over the cracked pavement, beckoned me forward, and each hesitant step toward the front door was accompanied by a chorus of memories. I remembered afternoons spent on the swing set my grandfather had built in the backyard, laughing until tears streamed down my face. The smell of fresh-baked cookies wafting through the kitchen windows, and late-night conversations with my grandmother over cups of hot cocoa. Those memories were like shadows now, flickering just out of reach, and as I stood before that house, I sensed that even the walls remembered the echoes of laughter and the whispers of long-held secrets. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the creaking gate, its rusty hinges protesting with a sound that pierced the stillness. The moment I stepped onto the porch, the old floorboards groaned familiar greetings. I paused for a moment, my heart racing as I grasped the doorknob, the cold metal feeling foreign against my palm. With a deep inhale, I turned the handle and stepped inside, the door swinging open to reveal the dimly lit interior. Dust motes danced in the soft beams of sunlight piercing through the grimy windows, and an overwhelming wave of memories crashed over me, threatening to pull me under. I fumbled with the old key, my hands shaking slightly as I unlocked the front door. The metallic clink echoed in the stillness of the air, a sound that felt submerged in nostalgia. As soon as I pushed the door open, it creaked on its ancient hinges, revealing an interior frozen in time, a portal to my childhood. Every detail was a vivid reminder of the years spent within these walls. The floral wallpaper, with its faded blossoms in hues of dusty pink and green, seemed to whisper stories of family gatherings and quiet afternoons spent reading in the sun-drenched corners of the living room. The antique furniture, each piece a testament to craftsmanship long lost, bore the weight of memories. My grandmother's favorite armchair, with its rich burgundy upholstery, where she would sit and share her tales of long ago. Even the faint smell of lavender, her signature scent, hung in the air like a ghost, wrapping around me and flooding my senses with warmth. It was the kind of fragrance that felt like love, reminiscent of the sachets she would stuff into drawers, the delicate herb that danced elegantly through time. For the next few days, I immersed myself in the task of sorting through decades of accumulated possessions, each item echoing history, laughter, and endless love. It was tedious work, with boxes overflowing and memories spilling out, but strangely comforting. Each object I touched seemed to hold a memory, a fragment of a life I had left behind. A small porcelain figurine caught my eye, a delicate dancer, with one arm poised gracefully above her head. I remembered the day my grandmother gifted it to me, explaining how it represented the beauty of movement and the importance of finding joy in life. As the hours slipped by, I lost myself in the rhythm of discovery, the mundane task transforming into a treasured ritual. I stumbled upon a stack of old photographs, some sepia-toned, others vibrant with color, depicting smiling faces frozen in moments of happiness. Birthday celebrations, family vacations, and candid shots of laughter echoed through the frames. They were visual breadcrumbs leading me back to simpler times, when my biggest worry was whether I would be allowed an extra cookie after dinner. It was on the third day, while sifting through the clutter of the past, that I found it, a hidden gem tucked away in the back of my grandmother's closet, partially obscured by an old winter coat I recognized from countless Sunday dinners. Pulling the coat aside, I discovered the old, leather-bound diary nestled among forgotten relics. The cover was worn, marked by scratches and impressions from years of handling, the once rich texture now faded. With a sense of reverence, I lifted it gently, as if it were a fragile treasure, and cracked it open. My heart nearly stopped as I recognized my own childish handwriting sprawled across the pages, innocent and unrefined. Each word pulsed with life, the ink a time capsule of thoughts, dreams, and worries from a girl who once believed everything was possible. It transported me back to afternoons spent with my grandmother, her encouraging voice echoing in my ears as she urged me to write down my feelings, my hopes, and my stories. Suddenly, the ordinary act of sorting through possessions had unveiled a deeper connection, a bridge to my past that I hadn't fully appreciated until this very moment. The diary was from the summer I turned 10, the last summer I spent in Millbrook before my parents divorced and I moved away with my mother. I had completely forgotten about its existence, its pages yellowed and frayed, dust collecting in the creases where time had taken its toll. As I flipped through the pages, I was surprised by the rush of nostalgia and emotion that flooded over me. Each pencil-written entry painted vivid snapshots of a childhood that was both innocent and tinged with the shadows of impending change. One entry caught my eye, as if it had reached out from the past and grasped my attention. August 15th, 1993 today. Tommy and I went to the new playground. It was weird. There weren't any other kids there, just an old lady sitting on the swing. She looked at us and smiled, but her eyes, I can't forget them. They were so dark and empty. Tommy wanted to leave, but I said we should stay. I wish we hadn't. Reading those words, I felt a shiver run down my spine as I tried to grapple with the fading threads of that long-lost summer. The date seemed etched in my memory, yet the details were obscured, shrouded in the fog of time. I frowned, trying to recall the memory, but it remained frustratingly elusive. Tommy. The name resonated like a distant echo, familiar yet intangible, like a ghost from my childhood that danced just out of reach. I could almost hear laughter, the sort that punctuated summer afternoons, filled with boundless energy and unfiltered joy. But try as I might, I couldn't conjure a face to match the name. And the playground? I had no recollection of a new playground being built that summer. It felt strange, a gaping hole in my memory, similar to spaces in a puzzle that should fit together but never do. I pictured a bright, colorful structure, shining under the golden sun, filled with laughter and playful chaos. Yet, the only image that crystallized in my mind was that of the old woman on the swing. Her smile haunted me, a twisted rendition of warmth that sent an inexplicable chill down my spine. As I continued to read, my heart raced. I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had transpired that day. The way I had dismissed Tommy's desire to leave, what had compelled me to stay? A mixture of childish bravery and naive curiosity? Or was it something deeper, an impulsive urge towards a haunting mystery I was too young to understand? Perhaps there had been a reason why this entry had slipped through the cracks of my memory. Had I buried it deep as a protective measure, the innocent, 10-year-old part of me instinctively realizing that not every moment from that summer was meant to be cherished? The emotions stirred within me, a blend of confusion and unease. What had happened on that fateful day at the playground? More importantly, as I delved deeper into the pages, would I be brave enough to unearth the memories I had long sought to forget? Intrigued, I continued reading, my heart pounding with anticipation. The next few entries were mundane, simple observations chronicling the long, languid days of summer, descriptions of sun-soaked afternoons spent splashing in the cool, inviting waters of the creek, the exhilarating rush of wind as my friends and I raced each other on our bikes down the winding path, and the sweet innocence of childhood that defined what it meant to be a 10-year-old boy. There was a comforting rhythm to those entries, a sense of freedom and carefree joy that resonated with my own childhood memories. However, as I flipped the pages, searching for something more, another entry abruptly intercepted my nostalgia, catching my attention like a lightning bolt striking the ground in the summer heat. August 20th, 1993. We went back to the playground today. The old lady wasn't there, but we saw a little girl. She was playing with a red ball, but when we tried to talk to her, she just stared at us. Her eyes were like the old lady's, dark and scary. Tommy said we should go home, but I wanted to stay. There's something about that place. It makes me feel strange. Like I'm not really there, but somewhere else at the same time. As I read those unsettling words, a chill ran down my spine, creeping through me like the shadows lengthening with the setting sun. What on earth could possibly compel a child to return to a place that felt so ominous? The entries continued, and what began as a mere curiosity morphed into. The librarian nodded with a gentle understanding, as if she had seen this kind of curiosity before. She motioned for me to follow her deeper into the labyrinth of shelves, filled with rows upon rows of old books and artifacts from the town's past. The dim light and the musty smell of aged paper created an almost sacred atmosphere, one that felt both comforting and heavy with forgotten stories. Once we reached the back room, the librarian pointed to a desk with a microfilm reader. You'll need to scroll through the reels. Each one contains newspapers from that year, she explained, her hands resting on the edge of the wooden desk. Start with the local sections. News about the playground may be there. Just take your time. I thanked her and began the laborious process, feeding the reels into the machine and squinting at the screen as I attempted to sift through the grainy images of old newspaper pages. My heart raced as I searched, each moment feeling heavier with anticipation. After hours of scanning countless headlines and articles, something finally caught my eye. A small, faded article tucked into the corner of a page from June 1993. The headline read, "Local boy goes missing at new playground." As I focused in, my heart sank. The article detailed how a young boy named Tommy had seemingly vanished while playing. The piece stated that he had been last seen on a day much like this one, when children were scattered around the area laughing and playing. But as the hours passed, the search efforts had yielded nothing. No witnesses, no clues, only empty swings swaying in the wind. I felt a chill run down my spine as I read on. Witnesses reported hearing a sudden hush among the children, a chill in the air, before the panic erupted once it was realized that Tommy was nowhere to be found. The article ended, somewhat dishearteningly, in a vague promise from the police that they would continue to search until Tommy was found. My mind was racing. My body felt cold. What did this mean? If Tommy had really gone missing, how could I not remember? I racked my brain, trying to piece together any fragments of memories attached to him, but they remained elusive, like smoke slipping through my fingers. Sitting there, surrounded by the whispers of the past, I became engulfed in a mixture of fear and determination. I needed to dig deeper. What had happened to Tommy? Why had the playground been so significant? And why did my family dismiss my memories as mere childhood fantasies? As I started to question the mystery further, the librarian reappeared, her gentle presence a calming influence. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asked softly. "I think I've just scratched the surface," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes these stories from the past hold profound truths," she said knowingly. "It's wise to tread carefully, though. Our memories can shape the way we see the world around us." With those words hanging in the air, I made up my mind. I couldn't let this go. I had to return to that playground, the one they said didn't exist anymore. I needed to unearth the truth buried beneath layers of denial, past memories, and perhaps something else entirely. The playground was calling me, and deep down, I knew that answering its call might reveal not just the truth about Tommy, but something about myself, too. The librarian's face changed at the mention of the name. "Tommy Anderson?" she asked. her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, the surname triggering a faint recognition. Yes, that sounds right. Do you remember him? She sighed heavily, her eyes clouding with sadness. Oh, honey. Everyone in Millbrook remembers Tommy Anderson. It was such a tragedy. My heart began to race, each beat thundering in my chest like an urgent drum echoing in the silence of the library. What happened to him? I whispered, my voice barely breaking through the weighty atmosphere that surrounded us. The librarian, her face masked with a look of somber understanding, pulled out a reel of microfilm and loaded it into the reader with a practiced ease. The faint whirring of the machine filled the small space, creating a cocoon of sound that seemed both familiar and unervingly foreign. She adjusted her glasses and said, "It's better if you see for yourself," her fingers deftly navigating to a specific date, each click and scroll echoing my rising dread. Then, like a ghost surfacing from the depths of my forgotten memories, there it was, bold black letters screaming from the screen, as if attempting to break free from the confines of the past. The headline seemed to leap off the page, clawing at my consciousness. Local boy missing. Search continues for Tommy Anderson. 10. The article, dated September 3, 1993, unfolded a heart-wrenching narrative about Tommy Anderson's disappearance from a vibrant local playground on a warm summer afternoon. Parents had gathered, children laughing, the air filled with the joyous sounds of play. But somewhere in that innocence, darkness had slipped in. According to various witnesses, Tommy had been playing a game of tag with a friend, my name withheld due to my age, as if that somehow protected me from the reality of what had happened. He had vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but echoes of laughter and a deepening sense of panic. The police had formed search parties that scoured nearby woods and fields, responded to tips from concerned residents, and combed through every inch of the playground where he was last seen. They knocked on doors, interviewed families, and tirelessly sought any clues that might unravel the mystery of his absence. But, according to the article, no evidence of foul play had been found, no leads emerged, and as days turned into weeks, the case remained unsolved, a cold case that seemed to chill the air around me even now. I sat there, frozen in place, staring at the article as memories flooded back in disjointed fragments. Tommy's freckled face came rushing back to me, his laughter, a sound so sweet and carefree that it now felt like a haunting melody I could barely recall. I remembered how he insisted on wearing his baseball cap backwards, a signature of his playful spirit, and how he used to challenge me to races, fueled by nothing but our childhood exuberance. How could I have forgotten him? How could I have let his name slip away, buried beneath the sands of time, when it had once meant so much? I dug my fingernails into the wooden armrest of the chair, grounding myself in the present as images of our shared moments flickered to life in my mind. There was the day we climbed to the top of the jungle gym, feeling invincible as we surveyed our kingdom from the heights. I could almost hear the whir of the playground swings, could almost see the sun glistening on his hair as we chased after balls and dreams. But now, all I could feel was the weight of despair clinging to the air, thick and suffocating as I confronted the reality of those days long gone. "Where did you go, Tommy?" I murmured, mostly to myself, the words hanging in the air like a ghostly echo. What had become of the bright-eyed boy I once knew? What stories were left unspoken? As I tried to piece together the fragments of my memory and the haunting headlines before me, a resolve began to simmer alongside my sorrow. I couldn't let Tommy slip into the shadows of oblivion without understanding what had happened to him. He deserved more than to be just another name lost to time. He deserved to be remembered, to be sought. "There's more," the librarian said softly, her fingers gently changing the reel, the faint whirring of the projector filling the small, dust-laden room. The dim light flickered across her face, creating shadows that danced in time with her words. Over the next few weeks, there were more disappearances. My blood ran cold as I leaned in closer, the old newspapers projecting tales of horror from a time I could hardly comprehend. I flipped through article after article, each one painting a more chilling image than the last. 5 children, all between the tender ages of 8 and 12, vanished over the course of just a single month. Each article was a relentless reminder of the fragility of childhood, detailing the circumstances surrounding their vanishings, all of them last seen at or near the very playground that had once been a hub of laughter and joy for the community. The innocence of their games was now overshadowed by an unshakable dread. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the disappearances stopped. What happened? I asked, my voice hoarse and barely above a whisper. The weight of the unsolved mystery settled heavily on my shoulders. Did they ever find out what happened to the children? The librarian shook her head slowly, the sorrow etched on her face evident. No, she replied, her tone grave and tinged with an air of resignation. It remains one of Millbrook's darkest mysteries. The playground was torn down shortly after, and the area was fenced off, as if trying to seal away the terrible memories contained within its borders. People said it was cursed. Her words hung in the air, thick with unease. I could almost feel the whispers of the past swirling around us, too faint for human ears yet palpable in the oppressive silence. There was a sense of unspoken tragedy that enveloped the whole town, a collective trauma that shadowed the adults who once played there as children. I closed my eyes for a moment, imagining the colorful jungle gym and the echoing laughter, now an unsettling ghost of what once was. What about the parents? I prompted, desperate for more answers, some thread of resolution among the chaos. How did they cope? Did they ever suspect anything? The librarian glanced at me, her eyes reflecting the flickering light. Some held on to hope for years, insisting that their children would come back. Others sought closure in darker ways, poring over old legends and rumors, searching for something, anything, that would give them a hint of understanding. There were stories of strange figures seen in the woods, and whispers of an old legend that spoke of a watchman who claimed the souls of children who wandered too close to the unknown. I felt a shiver run through me. The watchman? Yes, she said, leaning in closer as if sharing a secret. A phantom believed to guard that cursed playground. Some said he would appear to those who were lost, offering them a way out, but in exchange, they could never return. As the stories spiraled among the community, fear took root, and parents began to warn their kids of the dangers of wandering too far from home or straying into the woods. The librarian paused, her gaze drifting out the window as if she could still see the remnants of that lost playground. The truth is, in a small town like Millbrook, fear thrives on the unknown, and people clung to any shred of explanation to make sense of the senseless. What happened to the playground? I pressed, needing to know more about the place that had become a site of sorrow. It was demolished overnight. The town couldn't bear to let it stand as a reminder of the lost children. They sealed off the area, putting up a tall fence and adding "no trespassing" signs, as if that could erase the heartache. Over the years, children would dare each other to approach it, just to taunt the myth of the watchman. But nobody ever stayed long. While the physical playground was gone, the darkness remained, swirling silently in the corners of their minds. Is there anything left? I questioned, my curiosity now overwhelming the fear that lurked within me. Some claim that if you listen closely, you can hear the echoes of the children's laughter carried in the wind, a haunting reminder of their brief time in the world. Others say the playground still exists in some sort of parallel realm, a remnant of lost stories and childhood dreams. What's left, however, is the town's mourning, a hollow in the hearts of those who remember. Her words resonated within me, a chilling reminder of life's fragility. I felt an insatiable urge to uncover the truth, to delve deeper into Millbrook's darkest corners. What was it about that forsaken playground that held such power over its past? As the projector whirred to a stop, plunging us into darkness, I knew I couldn't walk away without seeking the answers that had been so elusive for so long. I thanked her for her help and left the library, my mind swirling with questions that seemed to grow more complicated with every step I took. The charming scent of aged paper and the quiet hum of the library still clung to me, but as I stepped outside, everything faded into a blur of uncertainty. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows on the pavement, and as I walked down Main Street, I couldn't shake the disquieting feeling that I was being watched. It was an oppressive sensation, as if 1,000 unseen eyes were fixed upon me, scrutinizing my every movement. Every now and then, I caught glimpses of movement in my peripheral vision, a fleeting shadow or the faintest rustle of leaves. However, every time I turned to look, I found nothing but the mundane appearances of everyday life: an elderly couple walking hand in hand, a group of teenagers laughing and chatting as they slid past on their bikes, the distant bark of a dog playing in its yard. Yet, the anxiety deepened within me, gnawing at the edges of my consciousness as I quickened my pace. Almost without realizing it, I found myself drifting toward the old part of town, drawn to its familiar yet haunting charm, like a moth to a flame. It was here that my grandmother's house stood, a crumbling relic of the past with its peeling paint and sagging roof, a place filled with whispers of memories long gone. I knew the playground had been somewhere nearby, somewhere that was once alive with laughter and joy, but as I pressed on, I couldn't recall exactly where it had been. As I turned onto Elm Street, a chill ran down my spine, seeping into my bones. There, at the end of the block, lay an empty lot overgrown with thick weeds and wild grasses, a stark contrast to the vibrant memories of my childhood. A rusted chain-link fence surrounded it like a cage, its metal links tarnished and coated in rust, standing as a testament to years of abandonment. Faded "No Trespassing" signs hung at intervals, their once bold letters barely legible, hinting at a time when the lot was vibrant and welcoming. I approached the fence, my heart pounding in my chest, a mix of curiosity and foreboding swirling within me. Through the weeds and tall grass, I could make out the faint outlines of what might have once been playground equipment. The twisted metal frame that could have been a swing set loomed like a ghost from the past. A half-buried merry-go-round rested precariously in the ground, and the skeletal remains of a slide jutted out from the earth, its once bright colors faded to a dull gray. As I stood there, staring at the forgotten lot, remnants of innocence now claimed by time and neglect, I felt a profound sense of loss. I could practically hear the echoes of children's laughter mingling with the rustling leaves, but then, more distinctly, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold, the faint, distant laughter of children. It was disembodied and eerie, floating through the air like a ghostly reminder of what had once filled this place with life. My breath hitched in my throat, and I instinctively stepped back, eyes darting around, searching for the source. But the familiar playground was now a shadowed memory, and the laughter echoed ominously, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. I spun around, looking for the source of the sound, but the street was empty. The laughter came again, echoing faintly through the chilly evening air, seeming to emanate from the playground itself. The swings swayed gently as if stirred by an unseen hand, and the old metal slide gleamed ominously in the fading light. Shadows stretched long across the gravel, painting the scene with an unsettling atmosphere. And then, I saw her. A little girl, no more than 7 or 8, stood framed by the fence. She wore a white dress that seemed oddly out of place, like something from another era, with lace trimmings that caught the last beams of sunlight. Her dark hair hung in pigtails on either side of her face, bouncing slightly as she shifted her weight. She clutched a red ball in her hands, its color vivid against the hazy background. But it was her eyes that caught my attention. Instead of the usual gleam of innocence, they were completely black, devoid of any white or iris. They absorbed all light and seemed to reflect something deeper, something unsettling. "Hello," she said, her voice eerily calm, tinged with a musical quality that sent shivers down my spine. "We've been waiting for you, Ethan." I stumbled backwards, my heart racing. The world around me felt disoriented, as if the very earth beneath my feet had shifted. Who are you?" I managed to stammer, my voice barely escaping my throat. The girl smiled, and it was not a child's smile. It was ancient, knowing, and terrifying, as if she'd seen countless seasons come and go. "Don't you remember? You used to play with us. You and Tommy." Her words slithered through the air, curling around my mind like smoke. The mention of Tommy sent a jagged pang through me, a childhood friend, lost to time and memory. Desperate to escape the suffocating grip of nostalgia, I asked, "What do you mean? Who are you? What do you want?" But deep down, I felt a gnawing recognition, a shadow flickering at the corners of my memory, trying to break free. "We play games, Ethan," she said, her eyes glistening with an ominous enthusiasm. "You were the best. You never left us like the others. Why did you stop? We've missed you." The words hung in the air like the chill of twilight, stirring forgotten recollections of laughter and carefree days spent basking in sunlight, not the kind of innocent joy that children usually know, but a different, darker kind that felt almost intoxicating. I recalled afternoons spent racing across the very same playground, only now the swings hung motionless, and the laughter felt tainted. "Now it's your turn to join us again," she continued, her smile widening as if she relished every word. "There are new games to play, and you have to choose." I felt a creeping dread settle in my chest as the shadows behind her began to lengthen, pulsating ominously. Their forms twisted and spiraled, forming fleeting images of children who flitted in and out of focus, faces frozen in expressions of joy tinged with an undercurrent of something far more sinister. "What do you mean, choose?" I asked, my voice shaky, piecing together the fragmented memories. "What have you all become?" The girl tilted her head in curiosity, the light flickering off her white dress. "Oh, you'll see soon enough. But first, you must decide. Will you play with us again or will you walk away, forgetting us like everyone else?" Her tone was playful, but it rang with a chilling finality. My pulse quickened as I realized the truth settled around me like a leaden weight. I was faced with a crossroads, and the darkness called out to me, urging me to return to the world I thought I had left behind. One part of me wanted to flee, to escape the grip of this haunting childhood remnant. But another part, darker, deeper, and eerily familiar, felt a magnetic pull toward the girl with the black eyes and the forgotten laughter. "Choose wisely, Ethan," she said, her gaze fixed on me, her grin unwavering. "The fun has only just begun." At the mention of Tommy's name, a flood of memories crashed over me, overwhelming and disorienting. I was pulled back to those endless summer days spent at the playground, feeling sunlight warm my skin, the scent of freshly cut grass filling the air. The laughter of children echoed like a sweet symphony in my ears, but there was something else lurking beneath the surface. I remembered the strange children with their dark eyes who would gather in the corners, whispering secrets I couldn't quite catch. They always felt different, as if they were waiting for something. The sensations of curiosity quickly morphed into unease, a tingling awareness that we were being watched by unseen presences. "What happened to Tommy?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and confusion. Vivid images of his smile danced in my mind, yet they felt tainted, tinged with an underlying darkness I couldn't articulate. The girl's smile widened, stretching across her pale face like a crescent moon rising against a night sky. "He's here. We're all here. And now, you can join us too," she said sweetly, her voice dripping with honeyed malice. She held out her hand, and I watched, horror sinking deep into my gut, as it stretched toward me and seemingly passed through the fence like it was nothing more than a mirage. As if drawn by a thread of unseen magic, the air around her shimmered and warped, revealing flashes of the playground from years gone by, pristine, vibrant, alive with the joyous shouts of children playing pretend. But there was a sinister undertone. The children's eyes were all black, voids that held no glimmer of light, their laughter a hollow sound that echoed the emptiness of a grave. Panic surged through me, a primal instinct screaming to flee. I turned on my heel to run, but my feet felt impossibly heavy, as if they were sinking into the earth itself, roots twisting around my ankles, holding me captive. The girl's laughter rang out behind me, infectious and eerie, shifting into the whimsical melodies of other voices joining in, all urging me to come and play, to join in a game that I could sense but not fully understand. They were beckoning me into their dark world. With a supreme effort of will, I broke free from whatever invisible force held me in place and sprinted towards my grandmother's house, desperation fueling my escape. Each step felt leaden, weighted with the knowledge of what lay behind me. I could hear their calls, louder now. My name rang out like an incantation that sent shivers down my spine. I finally burst through the door, slamming it shut behind me with a resounding thud that reverberated in the silence of the night. My breath came in ragged gasps, and I pressed my back against the door as if that could somehow fortify my defenses against whatever had pursued me. What had I just seen? The images replaying in my mind felt utterly surreal, leaving me questioning my reality. Was I going crazy, fraying at the edges of my sanity? That haunting night drifted onwards, and I tossed and turned in a bed soaked with sweat. Sleep eluded me like a fleeting shadow, every whisper of the night turning heavy with oppressive dread. With every fleeting thought, every flicker of my eyelids, I was dragged into the depths of those sinister memories. Each time I closed my eyes, her face would appear, an apparition of innocence tainted by darkness. Her black eyes bored into my soul, promising something unspeakable. In my dreams, I found myself back at the playground, but it was suffocated by darkness and twisted beyond recognition. The colors had faded, replaced by shades of gray, and the joyful laughter had morphed into an eerie cacophony. The swings creaked, moving on their own, pushing against an invisible force, an ominous warning of what might happen next. Shadows flitted at the edges of my vision, shifting and morphing into the shapes of children, their forms barely illuminated yet unmistakable in their grim playfulness. Each shadow whispered my name, a taunt entwined with the cool breath of the night, reminding me that something was watching, waiting, yearning for me to join their unearthly game. I woke with a start, drenched in sweat, my heart racing as if I had just sprinted a marathon. The oppressive darkness of my bedroom clung to me like a shroud, making every corner seem more ominous than it should have been. The digital clock on the nightstand flickered and cast an eerie glow, reading 3:33 a.m. An unsettling chill ran down my spine. Something felt off. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision, but it wasn't until I focused on the foot of my bed that I felt the blood drain from my face. There, in the dim light, stood the girl from the playground. She was just as I remembered, with her disheveled hair framing a pale face, her features eerily illuminated in the stillness. A shiver ran down my spine as she spoke, her voice, soft yet echoing strangely in the quiet room. "It's time to play, Ethan." I scrambled backwards on the mattress, pressing myself against the headboard, desperate to put as much distance between us as possible. "You're not real," I whispered, the words barely making it past my trembling lips. "This is just a dream. I'm going to wake up." The girl tilted her head at an unnatural angle, her black eyes gleaming like dark marbles, devoid of warmth or human emotion. "Oh, but I am real, Ethan. We're all real. And we've been so lonely without you." Her gaze bore into me, and I felt an almost magnetic pull toward her, despite every fiber of my being telling me to flee. As if summoned by her words, more figures emerged from the shadows. They had appeared as if they had been lurking there all along, children of various ages, all with the same disturbing black eyes and unsettling smiles that stretched unnaturally across their faces. They seemed unbothered by my fear, their presence an embodiment of innocence twisted by something dark and sinister. And among them, the sight of one familiar face sent my heart plummeting into a pit of despair. Tommy. He looked exactly as he had the day he disappeared, the innocence of childhood preserved on his face, yet overshadowed by an inscrutable sorrow. "Why did you leave us, Ethan?" Tommy asked, his voice echoing hollowly, resonating through the air like a ghostly whisper. "We've been waiting for so long." Each word pierced through my mind, igniting old memories that I had buried in the recesses of my being. I slammed my eyes shut, willing them to disappear, to awaken from this nightmarish vision. But when I opened them again, my heart sank. The room was emptier than before. The oppressive silence enveloped me once more, but the evidence of their presence still lingered. On the floor, where the children had just stood, was a single red ball, a vibrant hue that starkly contrasted the shadows around. It was unmistakable, the same ball the girl had clutched at the playground, a relentless reminder of a childhood marred by loss. The next morning, I was a bundle of frayed nerves as I made my way to the local police station, the weight of my experiences pressing heavily on my chest. I shuffled anxiously into the downtown precinct, greeted by the familiar sight of fluorescent lights and the repugnant odor of stale coffee. The officer at the desk regarded me with barely concealed skepticism as I recounted my experiences, choosing my words carefully, deliberately omitting any mention of the supernatural or unexplainable. "Mr. Walker," the officer said after I finished my recounting, clearly trying to rein in a burgeoning frustration. "The Anderson case and the other disappearances have been cold for almost 30 years. Unless you have some new evidence." His voice trailed off, leaving an air of resignation. "But what about the playground?" I pressed, desperation now coloring my tone. "Surely there must be some record of it being torn down, even something, anything, that explains what happened there." The officer sighed, rubbing his temples as if bearing an invisible burden. "There's no record of any new playground being built in 1993. The lot you're talking about has been vacant for as long as anyone can remember. Are you sure you're not mixing up your memories?" His expression shifted from skepticism to pity, as if I were merely a confused man clinging to fanciful thoughts born out of grief. Disheartened, I left the station, my stomach churning with confusion and frustration. How could there be no record of the playground? I knew what I had seen, both as a child haunted by its disappearance and now as an adult grappling with the echoes of the past. Something sinister was at play in Millbrook, and as the memories rushed back, like waves crashing over sunken stones, the urgency to uncover the truth clawed at me. I would not be silenced. I was determined to dig deeper, to find the answers that had eluded me for so long, even if it meant grappling with the buried shadows of my own childhood. They were waiting, and I would find them. Over the next few days, I threw myself into research. I scoured old town records, interviewed long-time residents, and even hired a private investigator to look into the background of the missing children. But at every turn, I hit dead ends. It was as if the playground and the disappearances had been erased from history, existing only in my memories and the fading newspaper articles. As my investigation deepened, strange occurrences became more frequent. I would wake up to find my grandmother's house rearranged, objects moved to places they couldn't possibly have been. The red ball would appear in random locations, always just at the edge of my vision. And at night, I could hear the faint sound of children's laughter echoing through the empty house. One evening, as I sat in my grandmother's study poring over old maps of the town, I heard a knock at the door. Cautiously, I approached and looked through the peephole. There, on the porch, stood an elderly woman. Her face was deeply lined, her white hair pulled back in a severe bun. With a start, I realized she looked familiar. She was the old woman I had seen on the swing in my childhood memories. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes, which were a pale, milky blue. "Hello, Ethan," she said, her voice creaking like old wood. "I've been expecting you." "Who are you?" I asked, my hand gripping the doorknob tightly. "How do you know my name?" "My name is Margaret Holloway," she replied. "I've lived in Millbrook all my life, and I know all about the playground and the children who were taken." My heart raced. Finally, someone who could provide answers. I invited her in, leading her to the living room where we sat facing each other. "What happened in 1993? I asked, leaning forward eagerly. "What was that playground? Where did the children go?" Margaret's eyes seemed to cloud over, as if she was looking into the past. "The playground was never supposed to exist," she said softly. "It appeared one day, out of nowhere, beautiful and new, like something out of a dream. But those of us who had lived in Millbrook for a long time, we knew better. We could sense that something wasn't right." She went on to tell me a story that chilled me to my core. According to Margaret, the land where the playground appeared had once been the site of a terrible tragedy. In the early 1900s, a group of children had died there in a fire at an orphanage. The land had been left empty ever since, regarded as cursed by the townsfolk. But in 1993, something changed, Margaret continued. The playground appeared, and with it came the children. Not normal children, mind you. They were something else. Echoes of the past, perhaps, or something darker. "But why?" I asked, struggling to comprehend. "Why did they take the other children? Why did they want us to join them?" Margaret's gaze met mine, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Loneliness, perhaps. Or maybe they needed new souls to sustain them. The boundary between our world and theirs is thin in places like that, places marked by tragedy. They were reaching out, trying to pull more children into their realm. As she spoke, I noticed something strange. The room seemed to be getting darker, the shadows in the corners growing deeper. And was it my imagination, or could I hear the faint sound of children's laughter? "You were lucky, Ethan," Margaret said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You escaped, but part of you was left behind, wasn't it? That's why you forgot. That's why you came back. They're not done with you yet." Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered and went out. In the darkness, I heard Margaret's sharp intake of breath. The temperature seemed to drop rapidly, and I could see my own breath misting in the air. "They're here," Margaret whispered, her voice trembling. "Ethan, you need to leave. Now." But before I could move, the room was filled with an eerie, pale light. It seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once. And in that light, I saw them, the children from the playground, their black eyes gleaming, their faces frozen in those unnatural smiles. They surrounded us, closing in slowly. I could see Tommy among them, his hand outstretched towards me. "Come play with us, Ethan," he said, his voice a hollow echo of the friend I once knew. "Stay with us forever." Margaret grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong for such an old woman. "Don't listen to them, Ethan," she hissed. "They're not your friends. They're not even children anymore. They're something else, something that feeds on innocence and fear." The children's laughter filled the room, a cacophony of joyless sound that seemed to penetrate my very soul. I felt a tugging sensation, as if invisible hands were trying to pull me towards them. My vision began to blur, the room spinning around me. In that moment of disorientation, I saw flashes of memory, the playground as it had been, the old woman on the swing, the little girl with the red ball. But I also saw beyond that, to the truth that had been hidden from me. The orphanage, the fire, the screams of children trapped inside. And I understood. These weren't just echoes of the past. They were souls trapped between worlds, unable to move on, forever reliving their final moments. And they wanted company in their eternal playground. With a supreme effort of will, I resisted their pull. "No," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. "I won't join you. And I won't let you take anyone else." The children's smiles faltered, their forms flickering like bad television reception. Margaret nodded approvingly, reaching into her pocket and pulling out a small, worn book. "This is a binding spell," she said, pressing the book into my hands. "It was used once before, to seal them away. But it weakened over time. You need to renew it, Ethan. You're connected to them. Only you can do this." My hands shaking, I opened the book. The words inside were in a language I didn't recognize, but somehow, I knew how to pronounce them. As I began to read, the children's forms began to waver more violently. They reached for us, their faces contorting in anger and fear. "You can't leave us," Tommy cried, his voice a mixture of the boy I knew and something infinitely older and more terrible. "We won't be alone again." I felt a pang of sadness for my old friend, for all of them. But I knew this was the only way. As I spoke the final words of the spell, a blinding light filled the room. The children screamed, their forms dissolving into mist. And then, silence. When my vision cleared, Margaret and I were alone in the room. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, and I could hear the normal sounds of the night outside, crickets chirping, a distant dog barking. "Is it over?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Margaret nodded slowly, her expression stoic and burdened by the weight of years unspent. "For now. But such things," she continued, her voice barely rising above a whisper, "are never truly over, Ethan. The boundary will weaken again, in time. That's why I've stayed in Millbrook all these years, watching, waiting." Her eyes, deep wells of both sadness and wisdom, gazed into the horizon, as if she could already see the disturbances on the winds that foretold an approaching shift. As her words settled over me like a shroud, I began to understand the gravity of her presence in my life and the hidden meanings of the ordinary moments I had taken for granted. I thought back to that summer day at the playground, where I had first encountered her. She wasn't merely an old woman on a swing, ghosting above the ground in playful reverie. No, she was a guardian, an unwavering sentinel, endlessly keeping watch over a doorway to somewhere else, somewhere that reality and imagination, past and future, intertwined in delicate, dangerous threads. In the days that followed our conversation, I took on the somber task of clearing out my grandmother's house. The familiar spaces filled with childhood echoes now lay heavy with silence, memories tucked away, fragile and yellowed over time. But amidst the bittersweetness of that labor, I felt something stir within me, a pull towards Millbrook that I couldn't shake. I decided to stay, to root myself here and take up Margaret's vigil. The playground had been dismantled, the swings removed and the jungle gym reduced to a skeletal frame of rust. The land now truly empty, a barren expanse where laughter once rang like a bell. Yet, even amidst this desolation, there were nights when the atmosphere felt charged, a hum of whispered secrets carried on the evening breeze. Sometimes, in the stillness of those hours, I can almost hear the faint echo of children's laughter on the wind, a melody that dances just beyond the reach of time. It asks me to listen, to remember. Every once in a while, I find myself wandering through Millbrook, my gaze scanning the grayness of the town's old buildings, looking for signs that I might not be alone in my newfound purpose. If you ever find yourself in a small town, I suggest you tread carefully. If you come across an old playground that seems too perfect, too inviting, where splashes of color and the soft gleam of sunlight seem almost magical, be cautious. Look closely at the children playing there. Do they smile too widely? Do their eyes glint with a knowing that belies their youth? And if you see a boy in a backwards baseball cap, or a girl with a red ball, slip away quietly. Turn around and walk away, as swift and silent as a shadow at dusk. Because some games, once started, can never truly end. They weave into the fabric of existence, blurring the lines of reality and beckoning you to join. As for me, I will be here in Millbrook, an unyielding sentinel like Margaret before me, keeping watch over the delicate equilibrium between worlds. I know now that the line between our realm and the next is thinner than we think, stretched taut as gossamer. And sometimes, the echoes of the past are more than mere memories. They are a warning, a whispered reminder of the price of forgotten innocence, the sacrifices made in the name of a fleeting happiness that can linger long after its source has faded away. So if you're driving through a small town at night, and you see an empty lot where a playground used to be, keep driving. Don't stop. Don't look too closely at the shadows. And whatever you do, don't accept any invitations to play. Because in some games, the stakes are higher than you could ever imagine. And the game, it never really ends. As I sit here, writing this warning to you, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. The shadows in the corner of my room seem to grow deeper, and I swear I can hear the faint sound of children's laughter carried on the wind. And there, just at the edge of my vision, I see a small red ball rolling across the floor.